Welcome to the Horizon Center School of Hypnotherapy, where we are committed to helping our students, graduates, and listeners be wildly successful in their practices. So, grab a pen and get ready to take notes while we talk about the 3 M's of a successful practice: mindset, mastery, and marketing. Now here's your host, clinical counseling hypnotherapist, Linda Campbell.
Episode, I want to take some time to address a question that I sometimes get from students and from clients. I think that people sometimes do research into hypnosis and come across people making pretty wild claims. This problem can be resolved in one easy session. And so I had somebody ask me recently, why does it take time to see results when there are places that guarantee results in just one session? Okay, so let's break this down. First, I want to just say be wary of anybody that guarantees results, particularly if they say that they can solve your issue for you in one session. There can be so many factors, some of which you have absolutely no control over, that can influence your client's results. For example, you can be the most skilled hypnotherapist in the world, have all kinds of talent and natural ability and all kinds of training. But if you have a client who isn't motivated to achieve their goal, you are going to get nowhere. It doesn't matter how many sessions you do with that person. If the client doesn't actually want to achieve the thing, they win. They're not going to achieve it. There's this misunderstanding that being in hypnosis is enough for the client to be in a receptive state where they'll just do whatever the hypnotist tells them to do. But that's not actually true. Yes, being in hypnosis makes a person more receptive, but you have to be giving them suggestions that they would agree to. If a client is coming to see you because their doctor tells them they need to quit smoking, but they love it and they don't want to quit smoking, you could do 1,000 sessions with that person and they're not going to get results. Because really what they want is to be able to go back to their doctor and say, see, hypnosis didn't work either, get off my back. So that's the first thing I want to say about this. Be really cautious with somebody who guarantees that they're going to give you results or that they're going to give you results within a certain number of sessions. So let's have a look at a couple of organizations that I'm aware of that make some crazy claims, and I've actually checked into these claims to see what the fine print was. How can these people make these claims? So for example, there's an organization that guarantees success with smoking cessation in just one session, which sounds pretty good because I'm doing usually 4 to 6 sessions with my clients. So let's break it down and look at the details. Let's look at what's in the fine print. Now, first off, this session costs $800. At least it was $800 a number of years ago when I looked into this organization. It might even be more expensive now. Another catch is you have to fill out a form, do a questionnaire to see if you can be hypnotized. And the session is 3 hours long. And so let's break this down. $800 is a pretty motivated client. If you charge somebody $800 for one session, you're guaranteed to not attract people who are just not that motivated. If somebody is willing to plunk down $800 to give up smoking, half of the work is already done for you. This is not the client who's coming to you because their doctor wants to get them to quit smoking and they want their doctor to just get off their back. This is not somebody who's going to put up a whole lot of resistance. Again, if somebody is willing to pay $800 for one session, they're pretty desperate, and a person who is highly motivated will get results more easily. The next thing, the form that you have to fill out, the questionnaire to see if you can be hypnotized, is a great big crock. Everybody can be hypnotized. All that's happening when you go into hypnosis is your brainwaves slow down. And this happens to us all day long. When we fall asleep, our brainwaves slow down from beta, our waking state, through alpha and theta, which is where hypnosis occurs, down on the way down to delta. We also pass through that alpha theta state when we wake up. So if you've ever fallen asleep, you've been in hypnosis. It's not some magical, mysterious place that only a select few can achieve. We go in and out of this deeper brainwave level state all day long. Your brainwaves slow down if you get really focused on something. Have you ever had the experience of getting online and going down the internet wormhole, and before you know it, 3 hours have passed and you have no idea where the time went? Have you ever been doing some hobby or activity where you got so engrossed that you didn't even notice people around you? These are hypnotic states. When we're really focused on something like this, we are actually open to suggestion. This is the exact same brainwave level state that a person is in when they come to see me for hypnosis. And so having to fill out a questionnaire to see if you can be hypnotized, again, it's a total crock. Everybody can be hypnotized. What that questionnaire is, I suspect, is seeing how suggestible the person is. People who are on the lower end of the suggestibility scale tend to be people who are analytical. They take a lot of time to get results. They think things through. They're likely to sit with things longer before they act on them. On the other end of the suggestibility scale are people who go into hypnosis readily, accept suggestion easily, and often respond to hypnotic suggestions as opposed to having to do any deeper work to see what's going on underneath the symptoms. And so when you're asked to fill out a questionnaire to see if you can be hypnotized, what you're really getting is a questionnaire to determine which end of the scale you land on. And so again, they're looking for highly motivated people that are willing to put $800 down for one session, and they're looking for people who are highly suggestible. That's about 10% of the population. So I suppose the other 90% would fill out the form and be told, you can't be hypnotized, you don't qualify for this deal. You can't guarantee somebody results if they tend to stay lighter, if they need deeper work to be done, if they're not in that 10%. All right, now let's talk about the third thing. The session that you're receiving is 3 hours long. Now, at my current rate of $160 per hour or per session, if you paid me $800, you would get 5 hours of my time. So you're not really getting a deal working with this person. You're getting 3 hours for $800, whereas working with me, you would get 5 hours for $800. And 3 hours divided into 1 hour long time slots with time in between to see how they're doing and process the suggestions and get more insight or clarity is far more useful than one 3 hour long session. Let me give you some reasons. Long sessions can be draining for a client. If you're doing a lot of deep inner work, if you're taking your client through past experiences or events that have had an impact on them, that can be exhausting for the client. Sometimes it's best to do this piece by piece, not throw a whole lot of deep work at them in one epic long session. Another reason why longer sessions are not ideal is it can become a trance management nightmare. Now, the longer a person is in hypnosis, the deeper they tend to go. So if you have a client who tends to go deeply anyway, and you've got them in hypnosis for 3 hours, there is a risk of them falling asleep, in which case you're no longer doing anything useful. Or the other option is you might be constantly trying to get their attention, pull them back, keep them from falling asleep, which makes the session unproductive. If you're spending all kinds of time trying to get your client to, not drift off to sleep instead of working on their goal, what are they paying you all that money for? They're paying you to keep them from falling asleep, not paying you to work on their goal. So I'd rather have people for shorter periods of time, shorter meaning an hour, so that they're not falling off to sleep. The time we spend is productive. And again, they've got time in between to process the sessions. Now, another reason why doing it in smaller periods of time as opposed to one big, long, epic session is ideal is because people may need time to get comfortable with hypnosis before they can do some deeper kind of work. Now, the approach that I take with my clients is not about suggesting away symptoms. I'm not putting a client who is a smoker in hypnosis and saying, you have great willpower and self-control, you're a non-smoker. I mean, I add some of that into the session, but really what I'm doing during my session, the primary part of it, is I'm identifying and then addressing any of my clients' specific reasons for why they started smoking, why they've continued to smoke. I'm personalizing the sessions for the client. Now, there are some clients who, when they first come to see me, are really nervous and, really anxious about the session. They don't really know what to expect. And they need some time to get comfortable with hypnosis before they can do that deeper work. If I take somebody who's nervous and doesn't really understand hypnosis and needs some time to kind of get comfortable with it. And I attempt to regress them in that first session to see if I can identify any of the reasons for their smoking. We may not go anywhere in that session. If they're already nervous and now I'm like, let's take you back to anything responsible for your smoking, that might feel too challenging for the client. When a client is more comfortable with hypnosis, they know what to expect, nothing weird happened, they feel comfortable with you, you're developing more rapport and more trust. Now they're ready to go in deeper and to do that deeper work. But that doesn't necessarily happen the very first time you meet a client. So I'm not going to take a client and, put them into hypnosis and keep them there for several hours, risk them falling asleep, risk that they're in a space where they're nervous the whole time and they can't really go deeper and uncover the cause of their symptoms. I'd rather see people for a little time, send them away, let them process what's going on, give them an opportunity to feel comfortable with me, be able to easily manage their trance step, and then have them come back and tell me how they did, so I can now adjust what I'm doing with them in hypnosis based on their results or any insights that they had after the session. Okay, so again, you really need to read the fine print. When somebody says, we can guarantee you quit smoking in one session, but you find out that session is $800, which isn't much of a bargain, and they have to pass the questionnaire to determine if they can be hypnotized, there's a lot of problems there. All right, so let's look at the next scenario. There's a fella who comes through town every now and then with his entourage who does large group smoking cessation sessions. Now, I actually attended his sessions once because I wanted to know what he was doing. I was probably the only non-smoker in the room. So one of the claims that this person makes is that they are going to guarantee that you quit smoking in that session. And because they stand beside their results, if you ever need to come back, hold on to your ticket and you can, I think, attend the next session or another session for free. Think about that. If they guarantee results, why would a person need to hang on to their ticket and return to another session for free? Why would they need to come back? Doesn't make any sense. So I attended, and here's what happens. There are actually 3 or 4 hypnosis sessions that occur, not one. So again, even this person realizes it takes more than one. Now, he's not doing one big, long, epic 4-hour-long session. It's a session, then a break, then a session, then a break, but you end up doing 3 or 4 sessions over the time that you're there. Now, alongside receiving the hypnosis sessions, they also try to sell you a tongue scraper, a recording that you need to listen to, and some kind of drops, maybe homeopathic or naturopathic. I'm not exactly sure what they were. I didn't buy the drops. Now, again, if you read the fine print, you can come back and go to another one of these sessions if you need, a brush up, if the results didn't last. However, they check in with you. Did you listen to the recording a certain number of times a week? Did you use the tongue scraper? Were you using the drops? And if you say no to any of those things, then I'm sorry, this offer is null and void. You don't get to attend for free. Those things are conditions on getting to attend the session for free. So again, there's some fine print you have to be aware of. Now, the truth is there is no magic pill. Good therapy takes time. You wouldn't expect to go to your counselor and have all of your challenges resolved in one session. So therapy takes time. I often say it's like peeling an onion. So let's break this down again. It will take less time if the client is highly motivated, they really want their results, they're ready, they're eager, they're going to do whatever is required to get those results. The client has insight into their symptoms. When a client comes in and they've already thought through where their symptoms might stem back to, and they've got some theories, and those theories are actually accurate, it's going to take less time for that client to get results than somebody who has no theories, because then part of the work we're doing is identifying what's really going on. It will also take less time if the theories the client gave you is all that you need to know. Now, I sometimes use a pie chart analogy when I'm talking to my students. There can be one thing responsible for your client's symptom, one piece of the pie. So for example, you have a car accident and since then you're unable to drive, you're too fearful. There's nothing else that has contributed to your symptom. There is one event and that's it. But in some cases, there can be many contributing factors that are responsible for the client's symptoms. So if the client gives you a theory, and that theory is accurate, but it only represents, 5% of the pie, and there's a lot of other things you need to address to get this client results, it's going to take a little bit longer. You have to do deeper work to figure out what the other 95% of the pie is. You can't just address 5% and expect they're going to get 100% results. It will also take less time if the client is comfortable going into hypnosis. If they've had hypnosis before, they're familiar with altered states, they're ready and raring to go. But that's not every client. I have a client right now who we barely got through the first 10 minutes of her hypnosis session, and she had so much anxiety come up for her that we had to stop and debrief what was going on. So she was comfortable putting her toe in the water, but we couldn't dive in full on the first time. It's probably going to take us several sessions for her to, even wade up to her knees, so to speak, because she needs a lot of support, a lot of reassurance. She's got a lot of trauma in her background. She doesn't trust easily. She doesn't feel comfortable doing what is perceived to be as giving up control. And so not every client is just going to jump into the deep end. Some people are going to need to wade in slowly. So therapy will take less time if the client is highly motivated. They have insight into their symptoms. Their insight is correct. There's nothing else you need to understand. And the client is comfortable going into hypnosis. And so sometimes all of those things line up and you get a hole-in-one and the client gets great results right off the bat. But if any of those factors are missing, it can take more time. If a client is nervous or anxious or has had some bad experience of hypnosis, it may take longer for them to feel comfortable with hypnosis to settle in and move on to doing therapeutic work or do the uncovering work that's required to resolve their symptoms. If the client is afraid of losing control or has difficulty with trust, like the client I just mentioned, it can take a little bit more time. I sometimes say the subconscious is a bit like a dog who's been kicked a few times. We can't expect it to just roll over and let us rub its belly on the very first time we meet it. That dog is going to need time to feel safe with us and develop trust with us and feel comfortable and know that it's in control and nothing bad is going to happen. Sometimes clients are like that as well. If the client has no insight, it's going to take more time. Or if the client knows only a piece of what's affecting them or the thing that they think is responsible for their symptoms is actually wrong. So what I'm doing with my clients is I'm offering a free consultation, and during that time, we spend a fair amount of time. It's an hour long, and most of that time is spent talking about the client's goal. So we talk about what's going on for them, and I'm asking them a lot of questions. I'm listening for any relevant history that would need to be addressed in order to help the client resolve whatever they're coming to see me about. I'm listening for patterns. I'm listening for events or relationships that have had an impact on them. I'm getting a sense of what I'm going to address with them. I'm getting the client's theories. I'm formulating my own. And again, the client's theories may or may not be accurate. In which case, there may be some work to do in hypnosis as to see what else is contributing to the client's symptoms beyond what they've already shared with me. Now, why may a client not know what's going on? There can be all kinds of reasons. Now, the client is trying to figure out what's going on for them using their conscious mind, which is logical and rational and reasonable, and it's the short-term memory. So they're using their short-term memory to analyze a behavior or symptom that may not be short-term. It may have been around for a while. It's kind of like looking in the top filing cabinet drawer for something in the bottom drawer. And they're using their rational mind to analyze something that's not necessarily rational. I have had so many clients who have been responding to events that they thought that they had dealt with, were responding to something that consciously they thought was trivial or meaningless, was responding to something they didn't even know had an impact on them. So when the client sits down with you in their fully conscious state and they say, this is why I've got this symptom, it may or may not be true. It may be a piece of the story. There may be more that needs to be understood. And every now and then the client knows exactly what it is. You get a hole-in-one. They get those instant results. But in those other situations, again, it's like peeling an onion. You might address the theory the client gave you in that first session while you're also helping them to be comfortable with hypnosis, establishing that sense of trust and rapport between you, helping them to feel safe with the process of hypnosis. And then you send them away and they process what happened in the session. And they may go in a bit of a different direction. They may realize that there's something else that's contributing to their symptoms. Now, let me give you an example. I had a client who, when we met for our consultation, was talking to me about anxiety that she would have whenever she had to take care of her grandchildren. And initially, she thought that this anxiety came from having had some experiences when earlier on taking care of her own kids, as well as her grandchildren when they were younger, where one of the kids would get hurt. So who knows? That could be accurate. The subconscious works by association. If you touch a hot stove, you learn pretty quickly not to touch another hot stove. If you were taking care of kids in the past and somebody got injured, it might make sense that you would have anxiety when it comes to taking care of kids now. But as we progressed in our work together, our goal actually changed. It became apparent that that wasn't really what we needed to work on. What we really needed to work on was she's retired and doesn't really want to be taking care of these kids. Earlier on, when she had more energy and didn't have other things that she wanted to do, she was fine taking care of them. She's the person that everybody in her life turns to. She's the go-to person. She's the person who does everything and solves everything for everybody else. And she's finally at a point in her life where she just wants to focus on herself, do her own thing, and not be everybody's go-to. So that anxiety was not really about, having had kids in her care get injured in the past. It was really about some part of her standing up inside her and going, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to have time to myself. But she didn't feel she could say no. She's one of these people who was brought up that you have to do things for other people. It's essential to take care of other people. She came from a big family where a lot of the child care fell on her because mom was just too busy with the big family and tons of kids and all the housework. So my client was the one who had to do everything. And so she was brought up from, being very little that you have to take on all of this responsibility. You have to be there for all of these people. You have to take care of them. There is no other option. And so that's deeply ingrained within her. It's a belief that she has about herself. That's what we actually need to work on. Feeling as though she could say no, deciding if it's a yes or if it's a no. Holding other people accountable to take care of things for themselves, setting some boundaries with other people, knowing that it's okay to stick up for herself and say, I really don't want to do this. You're going to have to find another option. So this is why, again, one session doesn't necessarily do it, because sometimes what the client comes in to work on is not necessarily what you actually need to be working on. As you work more with the client and you peel back the layers of the onion, it becomes evident what's actually going on, and sometimes the goal changes. So now, instead of working on dealing with her anxiety, we're working on helping her to be able to assert herself, set those boundaries, all of those things that make it easier for her to say no. The anxiety was a healthy part of herself saying, I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I can get out of it. If I'm anxious enough, people can't turn to me. So in response to my student's question, why does it take time when there are places that say we can guarantee you results in one session? Well, I think I've answered the question. It takes time because therapy takes time. It takes time because hypnosis isn't magic. It takes time because clients don't necessarily know everything about where their symptoms are coming from when they first come to see you. It takes time because you may be having to peel back the onion and do some discovery work to identify what's really going on. It takes time because clients can be nervous and unfamiliar with hypnosis, so they need a little bit more time to settle in. It takes time. All right. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I hope if you come across those crazy claims that you do your research and look into the fine print and, what they're asking from you in order to guarantee those results. I also suggest that if you're a student or practitioner of hypnotherapy, that you're really clear in communicating to your client that it is a process, that there is no one session is going to do the trick for you, at least not if you're doing hypnotherapy correctly. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, that you've gotten a lot out of it. Please return and see what else I have in store for you. And if you're interested in taking some hypnotherapy training, you can try out the first unit of my training for free to get a sense of my approach and what you're going to learn from me. You can find that at www.horizoncenterhypnotherapy.com. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you being here. Take care.
Thanks for listening. Remember to check out the Horizon Center School of Hypnotherapy.com for courses, products, and to take advantage of the free test drive of the hypnotherapy certification training.